What is up, y'all? We are officially back. It's been, 3 weeks now? I feel like it's been 3 weeks since I've last talked Potomac. But we are here for part one of the reunion. Yeah. I could have did last week's, but I wasn't doing last week's because Karen, that interview, she ain't do nothing. She did everything that I knew she was going to do, which was to not take accountability. Like, she went to jail and spent all that time and came out and still did not take real accountability. I said, wow, Karen. But we're here to talk about part one of the reunion. It was very good. I thought it was a good part one. I enjoyed it. It looks like it's going to be a good reunion, so we'll see, but we're going to get into it. But if you are new here, hit subscribe. Do that real quick. Thumbs up the video. Get in the comments. Hype the video. Share the video. Subscribe if you're new, and let's break this down. Let's go. All right, so we opened the episode off with Wendy's montage of when she first got on the show to her glow up to where she currently is now, which is pretty much telling you like, okay, this is where Wendy started. This is when the money started to come into play. We see her starting to change her appearance and whatnot, glowing up, even getting more and more confident. So we then fast forward flash back for us now to October 9th when the shit hit the fan. I remember how I felt watching it. When it all came out, I was floored when the news came out that her and Eddie had gotten arrested on fraud charges. So we then fast forward to October 16th, which was the week after all of that shit happened. They got back home. This scene, to me, looked very performative. Like, especially on Wendy's end, it just seemed like bad acting to me. That's what it seemed like. It seemed like she was trying to put on that, like, oh my God, I can't believe my life is like that. It just did not seem genuine to me. It didn't. But they're sitting in the living room. She's talking about how, like, being in the house, it don't even feel the same. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. She's like, I have to eat. I'm not hungry, but I feel like I have to eat. I have no desire to do anything. Just the way she was talking, looking dazed. It was like, she's like, I don't know what to do. That's what it was looking like to me. I'm like, it don't seem genuine. But they say that today it just does not feel like it did not feel real whenever they actually got arrested. And Wendy was like, never in my wildest dreams did I think that it would lead to us being in handcuffs and getting taken away. I said, you thought all of what y'all allegedly have done would not lead to this? Like, you were that delusional that you thought she was going to be able to get away with that? If allegedly, I'm like, please. But he then talks about her pretty much talking to her sister in the holding cell, and they start getting emotional because Cameron, their daughter, she was like, Mommy, where are you going? Or like, Mommy, where are you? And whatnot. And she was like, when I told her that I was seeing her tomorrow, I was just scared because it's like, I didn't know if I was actually really going to see her tomorrow. I just told her that. And it's like, we don't know if it was actually going to happen. Wendy then says like she was worried about the kids and she was scared for them. And I'm like, you was worried about the kids then, but I'm like, you didn't think about them when y'all started doing what y'all was doing. Like, y'all should have been thinking about them before y'all even did what y'all was doing. But she didn't ask. And it's crazy because it's like everything that allegedly has happened, it's just like the amount of things that they've done, the amount of credit cards, social securities, aliases, all that stuff that they've been doing, and then all of the filings on insurance. It's just like, what is really going on? What is really going on in y'all's brains? Because y'all both are too smart for this. The amount of degrees that both of them shared together combined, it just tells you like you can be book smart, but you can lack a lot of street smarts, and they don't have the street smarts. But she didn't ask if he thinks that this will affect their marriage. And he was like, I mean, obviously it'll impact us, but at this point, God has been here with us and we've been here 15 years. So why would we not make it anymore? But she says, I just want you to understand that I just won't be the same person because I'm not the same person anymore. I'm pretty sure. But we fast forward to the reunion 3 months later, which was, where were we in January? We're in February. So this was last month, I think. But all the ladies are getting ready, and we see Ashley in Giselle's makeup room where she's getting her makeup done. And Giselle's like, I'm just ready for Wendy's State of the Union address. So we then see Wendy arriving to the studio, or at least to the set. But the ladies, they're making their way out. Everybody looks beautiful for the most part. I feel like the best dress definitely was Wendy. If you ask me, Wendy, the money, the fraud money, allegedly, she put it to good use because Wendy been looking good. She been looking good, but she looked the best if you asking me. The worst, if you ask me, was Kay. Kay's a beautiful, beautiful woman, but the dress, I just didn't like the dress. But Giselle comes out first, and Andy's like, you going to be sitting next to Wendy. And she's like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to hold her hand? whatever you feel. You supposed to be her friend now. But Ashley and Stacey, they come out. Ashley's claiming that Stacey's wearing the same designer that she wore last year. Ashley just want to feel like she's some damn body. Like, you ain't no fashionista. But Angel, Kay, and Tia come out, and Giselle ends up talking to Tia, telling her that she smells good. And Tia's like, thank you. I showered for you. And guess what? I had running water. I said the shade because Angel was sitting over there looking too. But they didn't really, and Angel looked good too. But they realized that Wendy is the last to come out, and she makes her entrance looking, she looked good. She looked good. Money well spent. So Andy begins the reunion, and he starts talking about like it's been 10 years since Potomac debuted, how the reunion is essentially a equestrian theme because of all the horse type shit that we had going on this season. So he then talks to Giselle and Ashley, as they're the two remaining OGs, about like the origination of the show, how it became what it was, and if they imagined it getting to where it is right now. Giselle was like, no, I didn't expect it to get to that point, but when we got Ashley, we realized we had something special. I'm like, did you? And do you with her? With her? But both of them felt like the season was formed without Karen. Like, this was the first season without Karen. We all felt, I mean, I feel like it was different, but I don't feel like it was bad. I was wondering, I was like, is it going to be a bad season without Karen on it? It was a solid season. It was a very good season. There was not an episode where I wasn't entertained. But they both felt like it was just foreign. And Giselle says, like, I just love arguing with Karen. And we know that. But Andy, and I feel like Karen probably feels the same way. Because when they get into it, it's like you can tell they having fun. It's like they doing it for the show. They might be having little issues, but you can tell it's for the show. They know what they're doing. But Andy then lets them know that she is, in fact, here. And she will be coming out. She's been watching the season. And Giselle's like, yeah, I know she's been texting me as she's been watching it. But Ashley then greets Angel and Tia as this is their first seasons. Then he gets to Stacey in her sophomore season. He's like, did you have a good sophomore season or a slump? She was like, at this point, I feel like I've grown. If she says it's a word, y'all don't tell me. Y'all tell me if it is one. I don't know. But she then says like she took the good and the bad with the season. So Andy then addresses Kay as well, as this is her sophomore season. And he's like, how did you adjust from being a friend of the show to then getting two flutes? And she was like, last year kind of wore me up, and this year I've been having a little bit more fun. And I'm like, last season, I feel like you had more fun than you did this season, because this season you look like you was more mad this season. But Andy then greets Wendy. And he's like, you've been on the show for half of its life. As we know, she came on season 5. And he was like, how would you compare the Wendy that started on the show to the Wendy that is here now? And she was like, I mean, the one that started was unsure of herself. I just had Cameron at that point going through the transformation. It's been empowering. I feel like a stronger woman. We then get to Andy addressing the elephant in the room. I said, okay, this is how we do it. Like, this is how you do it. You get straight to it. Because normally on reunions, the big shit, the big topics, we got to wait till part 3 to get to that. He started it off with Wendy. As Wendy and Stacey are in the first chairs, they need to be addressed first. I feel like they should definitely have their stories really talked about immediately. And them being in the first chairs, you know that they essentially had a big part of the season. So their stories and their relevance should be able to carry throughout all. Which, as you saw, if you watch Salt Lake City, Lisa Barlow was in the front in the first chair, and she carried through all the parts, whereas Bronwyn was on the other side in the first chair. She didn't factor into the third part. But he then gets on talking about the elephant in the room, talking about the arrest, facing felony charges, and he asks, like, what can you tell us about the case? Let me pause. She says what she can say is the investigation is ongoing. We've had court appearances, and it's just been a trying time for my family, of course. So Andy asked how the kids are handling it, and she was like, I mean, it varies because you have somebody like Cameron who is not aware, but then you have Carter who is. Like, when it happened, he was very aware, which I hate that. I hate that, and that's what I've really hated the most. And I'm like, why did y'all not think about your kids? And it's like Carter is old enough to be able to understand what he would see on social media and what he would see through in the news. And she says, like, they tried shielding him, but when it happened, she had called her mom and sister to pick the kids up. They weren't home when it happened, when they got arrested. But she then says that she was taking a nap and woke up to Eddie pretty much telling her the police are here. So she then called her mom and her sister to get the kids. And I'm like, so you knew the minute the police was out there that they was coming to get your ass, and you knew exactly what it was. But she then says that Carter knew something was up because of how like random it was for them to just get up and then have to go be with auntie and grandma. So she was like, he saw everything when he opened his phone as well. And Andy's like, did he see the mugshots? And she was like, yeah, he saw. But what hurt me is the fact that he didn't tell my mom and my sister. So he just went to sleep with it. And Eddie and Wendy had picked him up from school the next day, kind of like trying to pretend like nothing happened. And he was concerned, and she could tell that he was concerned. And he was like, where were you at? And because she asked him like what was wrong, he was like, where were you at? And she looked in his eyes, and she could tell at that point like he already knew. And she says that she's always said that she would never lie to her kids. Kiana said, I said Kiana, but that's how I reacted, because I'm like, because if you never lied to your kids, I'm pretty sure they like, where does money come from? And you be like, mama working hard. So are you lying to them then? But Wendy then says like he was crying, and she pretty much held him, and they were crying together in the backseat. And I know it's sad. It's just sad. Like when I think about the whole situation, it's just like when it comes to Wendy and Eddie, it's two very educated black people, like black people, two educated black people with what, three, how many kids they had? 3 kids now. 2 of them are young boys and then a young daughter. And it's just like, you want good things to happen for a family like that. And to see that you got both parents with the education that they have, with the degrees, the accomplishments that they have, to do what they did. And it's like, y'all had no regards for your kids, because if you did, you wouldn't have done it, because you know it's embarrassing for them too. And then it's sad because we know if what is in fact a fact, or what's being alleged to be a fact is in fact a fact, they're going to be without their parents for a good amount of time. And that's going to be detrimental to them. And I hate that. But Wendy then says that she was like, her and Eddie were transparent with the kids going forward. Like when we were going to court, we told them we didn't want them to be blindsided. And Giselle ends up asking like if the nap was why her wig was lopsided in the mugshot. And Giselle was like, I mean, that wig was wigging. And Wendy was like, it was. But Andy ends up asking if it was a nap wig. And Wendy's like, no, it's my professor wig. And she starts chuckling. I'm like, right here, I was like, why is she laughing? Like, in regards to this, I wouldn't think that she would be, I don't want to say she was jovial, but she definitely seemed a little bit more joking when it came to it. That's just what I got off of it. But Andy ends up asking, like, how can you explain the grin in the picture? And she was like, I mean, the guy was nice, and he was telling me at this point, like, give me some looks, give me another look, give me a look here, like playing around with her, because it was heavy, and he wanted to kind of like make it a little bit light. But I'm like, considering everything that you know as to why you were in there, I don't think that I could have changed. I wouldn't have been smiling. If I'm in jail, I wouldn't be smiling. Like me, I wouldn't be. But Stacey's under her breath like, well, did you at least get to choose your shot? Ashley's sitting there laughing. I'm like, Stacey. But Andy ends up asking Wendy if she regretted smiling. She's like, no, like we've been through things in life and you just smile through the pain at this point. And everybody agreed. But Giselle ends up asking if she had some happy Eddie when she took that picture, or before she took that picture. And Wendy was like, no, Eddie was the one that was looking like he was high as a kite, which he was. And she was like, he didn't have any happy Eddie either. He had just gotten woken up from his sleep in the cell to get up and go take a picture. That's why he looked like he was a little bit dazed. But Stacey ends up asking Wendy if she spent the night in jail. And she was like, yeah, I did. Stacey and Giselle are like, what? They just asking all these questions. What was you doing? What was it like? And she was like, it was scary. But Wendy says that she had slept a little bit, but didn't know that they controlled the lights in jail and you kind of lose your autonomy. And she was like, at this point, because they was asking, like, did you get to go to the bathroom? Like, what did the bathrooms look like? She was like, she could have went to the bathroom. She described what it was like there, but she didn't even go to the bathroom the whole time she was there. I was like, I don't know how you did that. Because me, as much water as I drink, I probably pee at least maybe 8 or 9 times a day. I'm not going to hold you. But she didn't use the bathroom. Giselle then says that she remembers talking to Wendy when Karen went in, and Wendy was like, I couldn't believe that Karen woke up in jail and you went through that shit and you seem like you might be kind of like, I don't want to say that you like okay with it, but like, are you really okay? Ashley butts in and is like, you're acting kind of jovial. And Giselle asks her if she's okay. And Wendy's like, no, I'm not okay, but I will be. Giselle ends up asking if she's terrified. And she's like, absolutely, but my faith is carrying me. But Ashley then says, my number one fear is going to jail because it's terrifying. And now to have 2 people that are in this group that I'm in going to jail is terrifying me. I said, for what? For what? Because if you know you're not doing anything to get locked up, why are you scared? Why are you scared? Are you doing something, Ashley, that we don't know that we might hear of next season and you might actually have a storyline? But Andy moves to Stacey. He starts talking about how he's obsessed watching her old QVC videos. Everybody on Twitter is Stacey's funny. Stacey is funny. Even though Stacey, I love Stacey. I love Stacey. She's very entertaining, but she gets on my nerves with the lies, just like she gets on a lot of these women's nerves with the lies. But her voice, that QVC voice that she has a natural, like, super prim and proper voice that cracks me up. It cracks me up. But Andy ends up asking Kay, like, what are your thoughts on the videos? And she was like, I mean, I find them entertaining. Like, I wouldn't fall asleep to them. But Andy then brings up Stacey being recognized on Vanity Fair for the best performances of 2025 in, like, I guess, reality TV. And she was like, I felt humbled and I felt grateful. Andy asked Giselle how she felt, and she was like, I mean, Potomac, we've been kind of known for drama and whatnot, like jail stints, the fights, and this was positive, and she ends up congratulating Stacey. I said, okay, Giselle. Stacey says, wow, thank you. Giselle starts laughing like, why are you being dramatic? But and it's like, you could say that, but then, like, is Stacey really being dramatic? Because at this point, like, Giselle be on her head. It's rare that Giselle says anything nice to her. So I'm like, okay, I guess. But Andy ends up asking if Stacey considers what she does on the show as a performance, because that's what the ladies take issue with. Ashley, Kay, and Giselle are like, exactly. Do I feel like Stacey is performative? To a degree. I feel like Stacey knows what she's doing and she plays it up. So that is a performance, if you asking me. Stacey then says, I mean, I think one of the most beautiful things about my QVC shit coming to light is the fact that we can see that I've always been the same person. Andy's like, have you? And Ashley says, I mean, you were performing at QVC because that's your job. Like, that's what we're talking about, performative. And Stacey's like, yeah, indeed, but you can still see my personality running through. That is true. I do believe that. I feel like two things can be true. Is she performing? Yes. But do I feel like you can see who Stacey is coming through it? Yeah, I do. But Wendy says that she agrees with that. Tia then says, look, I mean, I sat in front of Stacey on a plane, especially on one of the group cast trips, and I heard somebody speaking and I didn't know it was her because her voice was different. So she basically like, yeah, she do be performing. So Andy ends up asking like what the tone was, and Tia was like, I mean, it was deeper. She started using different dialects. So Stacey then says, I mean, well, you are the queen of accents, so you can call it. So Tia then says, I mean, I feel like Stacey has a QVC accent. She has this QVC voice and was looking for something to pin on me because I have this English accent. And clearly that triggers you because you married up and are trying to be prim and proper. I said, ooh. Ooh. Stacey then says, I mean, it's not your English accent. It doesn't ring true when you talk. And Giselle was like, when have you heard her speak any differently? Stacey says, I mean, the same way she heard me. I said, give an example, because Tia gave you one. She gave an example as to when she heard you talking differently. So you give us one. Giselle was like, okay, so when? Stacey then says, I mean, Tia's been married to a man from Chicago for years. She slips and slides often. That's not uncommon. It's not, because I'm from the South. I was raised in the South, born and raised in the South, but I grew up in the city. My parents grew up in the South, but they grew up in the country. So my parents are a lot more country when it comes to the way they talk. And I still have that country twang. My sister does. My sister's accent is a little bit deeper when it comes to, not deeper, a little bit more country than mine. I can kind of turn it on and turn it off. But when I get around my family, like get around my family for real, especially when I go up to where my family is from in Morganton, North Carolina, in the country, I'm telling you, it comes out. Like you get a little bit more of that accent when you're around people that have that accent. So it's just natural. But Tia then says, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I got American kids too at this point. But Tia then says, I mean, you're just exposing your ignorance. And it's just funny because you talk about going to all these countries and stuff. You act like it's an accomplishment. So clearly you're new to this. So she kind of like shading her. But Andy then moves to Stacey's integrity being questioned last year at the reunion when TJ had said that she basically paid him off to be her boyfriend on the show. And he asked if she still stands on denying it, and she still does. She stands on it. Giselle's not buying it. She's not buying it. I still don't know if I believe it or not. I don't know. I feel like it's some truth to it. I don't know. I do. But Andy ends up asking if Timo has met TJ when she was on QVC. And she was like, yeah, of course. So Andy then asked her if TJ played a role in their divorce, and she denies it. Andy ends up asking who filed for divorce, and she says that she did. The producers rolled that shit back, and it proves that she's lying. Got caught in a lie. She was the defendant. Timo was the plaintiff on them divorce papers. So Andy ends up reading a question from a fan pretty much about Timo not attending the dinner with Wendy, Tia, and their husbands when she was invited. And it was because of Wendy and Eddie. Stacey then says, he knew how hurt I was with Wendy and Eddie being the messengers of that painful moment. And she was like, I didn't go to the dinner because of last season. That is the reason why, not just because Timo wasn't in town. I don't believe that, because at that moment in time, her and Wendy was still like, they weren't as tight as they are, or at least seem to be now, but they were friends and they were like getting closer and closer at that point. I don't think he was still mad at Wendy, because if you was still mad about it, you wouldn't have been talking to Wendy. You wouldn't have been friends with Wendy. But Andy then says the footage proved the timeline of what you had said about Timo's traveling and shit. It proved that it wasn't what you said it was, and the flashback confirms it. And that's the thing. Like I said, the Stacey fans, y'all are a different breed. I love Stacey, but it's that I'm never at a point where I can't call somebody out. I feel like a lot of the Stacey fans love the fact that she's on the opposing side of Giselle and Ashley, that they lie and make shit up and excuse shit for Stacey that they wouldn't do for anybody else. And like with this shit, I remember it all season. I told y'all when it came to this, she would be lying and gaslighting Tia. And then people would get online doing the same thing, acting like Tia's wrong when she's not. But Stacey then says, my husband travels twice a week, sometimes internationally, and he wasn't in town, and I just didn't want him to meet them just yet. So Stacey then says to Tia, if I invited you to meet my family and I told you that he was uncomfortable, why would you go repeat it to that person? I said, Wendy was your friend at the moment. But Tia then says, the straw that really broke the camel's back was when you were not owning up to the shit. And then you tried to make it out that I lied on you the minute you got called out, which is a fact. But Stacey then says, you didn't come to genuinely get to know us. You came to clock in and then report the shit back to your master. She's talking about Giselle. Giselle was like, and you reported back to your master too. And she's talking to Wendy. Wendy says, I'm nobody's master. But Tia then says, context is important. I was uncomfortable because I've already heard at this point that you've gone and repeated shit back about Monique's ex-husband that affected her family. Tia then says as well that she asked Stacey if she knew Chris, and Stacey was like, I don't know that man. Like at this point, I would never discuss anything about his family with him. I've only seen him socially. The flashback kind of confirms it. Tia then says, I was emotional because if somebody can lie like that, she couldn't even finish her statement because Andy ends up reading a question asking Stacey why she had more smoke for Tia at her Shio event than she did for Ashley when Ashley acted worse. And that's a good question to ask, because I was wondering the same thing, because Ashley was calling her a lying asshole or a shiesty asshole. I forget exactly what she said, but she disrespected her at her own damn event, and she let her ass stay. Tia didn't disrespect her at her event. Tia was just calling her out, and Stacey didn't want to answer it, and then she got her up out of there. But yet you let that woman call you a lying asshole, the same woman that's been on your head the entire season, and you ain't kick her out. But Andy asked if she regretted kicking Tia out, and she says, no, I didn't. But Andy ends up addressing Stacey pretty much being adamant about at the last reunion, that she was not opening a cannabis line, and turned around and ended up doing it. So he's like, can you finally admit that you were actually trying to, at least are in motion to opening this business? She was like, I can admit to holding many meetings about different endeavors. It wasn't a done deal. So Giselle was like, why couldn't you have just said that? It's a good question. But Stacey says, because I don't owe you that. I'm like, but why lie though? Why lie though? You knew you were thinking about that. Granted, you don't have to say it, but my thing is, why lie about it though? Why lie about it? But Angel's interjecting and nobody was acknowledging her. Nobody was. But Stacey ends up stating that I didn't have a cannabis line at that point. You asked me and I didn't. So I guess, but whatever. But you were trying to. But Andy ends up asking if she feels like Stacey had pure intentions with naming the cannabis line. She's asking Wendy that. Wendy says, she knew what she was doing. Like, I feel like Stacey, that was her way of getting back at me and Eddie, which I do believe as well. But Stacey was like, I mean, that's an interesting thought. I said, because it's true. It's true. But Giselle ends up asking Wendy if she really thinks that Stacey is that deep. Like, do you really think she's that smart to be doing something like that? Wendy says, yeah. And I do too. Stacey's not stupid. Stacey is not stupid. Like, what she's doing on this show, she knows it sells. She knows everybody's eating it up. So she's going to continue to do it. Stacey's not a dummy. She's not stupid. But Andy ends up asking Giselle, Ashley, and Kay why they were so pressed about Stacey. Well, this is a fan question, but he asked them why they were so pressed about Stacey's alleged lies when they don't affect them. Being so pressed, yeah, I mean, I guess. But me personally, I don't like liars. I don't want to be around somebody that lies, whether it's a white lie or a major lie. Because if you can tell a little small white lie, you can tell a major lie. So who the fuck wants to be around somebody that does it all the time? And then when something big happens, I can't trust you because I know that you're a liar. Whether it's a white lie or a big lie, even if it's not about me, I'm sitting here watching you lying. Why would I want to be around you like that? So you got to clock that. But Stacey's like, ding, 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 ding. It's not affecting them. So why are they mad? I just told you why. But Giselle then says, at this point, we were shown information. Did you expect us not to talk about it? Stacey then says, I mean, I don't think that you treated me fairly, especially having been with, she clocked them. She said, having been women who have been with men who have humiliated you both. I said, that's the truth. That's the truth. Wendy said, whoo. Giselle says, stop. I said, because it's true. But Giselle then says, TJ humiliated you. That's her point. She's basically stating, y'all sitting here doing what y'all was doing when it came to the TJ stuff, knowing that he's humiliating me, yet you, Jamal Bryant, has been humiliating you, Giselle. Ashley, Michael Darby, been humiliating you. So it's like it's rich for y'all when y'all know exactly what it feels like. So Stacey then says, at this point, you've been in my shoes. You should have shown me empathy and compassion. I don't know how I feel about that. But Giselle was like, for what? Like, he told Eddie that you paid him and it just happened that me and Ashley were in LA and we happened to see the paperwork. I said no. No. Yes, he told that, but a coincidence that you and Ashley just happened to be in LA and then y'all see the paperwork confirming that he paid Stacey off. I don't believe that's a coincidence. Y'all were in LA to get that shit. But Giselle then says, like, us not saying anything wouldn't have been authentic to the show. So we said it, you denied it, and we can move the fuck on. I said, yeah, that's true. But Kate then says, my issue is that Stacey wouldn't own up to it. Tia says, I mean, it can't be that you're the victim all the time. At some point, you have to realize what you're doing that makes people react to you in a certain way. And that is true. That is true. Did they do a lot on Stacey? Sometimes, yes. But sometimes Stacey definitely gave them the reason to do it. Like, let's keep it real. But Andy then says, I mean, how will you improve your relationships or at least regaining trust going into the next season? Stacey's like, I mean, I'll try to be more direct instead of beating around the bush. That is something that I do want to work on because I don't want it to get misconstrued. Ashley says, or being dishonest. I said, you would know. You would know. But Andy then says, Stacey, sometimes when we have housewives that are getting gassed up by the fans, it could affect how they go into the next season. I said, we're going to see. We're going to see. But Stacey says she's not worried. But Andy then moves to Angel in her first season, her crazy first season. He ends up asking where she's currently living. They're still back and forth from Potomac to Colorado, but they have in fact purchased their Potomac home. It's undergoing renovations that with the same people, the same company that did their Colorado home, which it's going to be beautiful. So Ashley ends up asking if it's 30 acres. And Angel says, I mean, it's a few, but if you lived in Potomac, you would know. I said, oh, this is how we coming, Angel. I'm like, she trying to throw a Hail Mary to get another season, even though we now know that she is not coming back, which she made the right decision because y'all was setting her up. I said it on Twitter. Y'all was setting her up. The ones that liked Angel now, and because she was up against Giselle and Ashley, that's really what it is. Y'all wanted her to come back, knowing these women don't like her and are probably not going to like her. That's going to set, and you saw how she was at the end of last season, this season, at the end of this season, her mental was all the way down and it would really be in some trouble next season. But Angel then says that Ashley says, I mean, I chose not to live in Potomac. I could, but I chose not to. I said, could you? But Angel says, okay, sure. But Andy ends up asking if Tia helped with the sale. And Tia's like, no, I didn't. Like, at this point, I didn't come on the show looking for clients. I came on the show looking for friends. Giselle says, well, we know she didn't, talking about Angel. Like, she made that crystal clear. And they showed a flashback of her in the confessionals after the catfish situation where she was like, they sitting here thinking that I came here to be friends with Giselle, Ashley, and Wendy. Like, no, I wouldn't do that. Do I think that she came there to be friends with them? Yeah. But do I think she's solely like, I want to be friends with those three? No. But do I feel like she came, obviously she came to be friends with them because she came to be on the show. But Angel says that I wasn't the one over there kikiing every 5 seconds when the eviction shit came out. Those three were the ones meeting up talking shit about me. That is true. It is true. But Wendy then says, I mean, at this point, how come you haven't checked Tia? Because she's the one that brought the shit to Giselle in the first place. That is also true. Giselle co-signs it. Tia was like, yeah, I apologize, and I'll do it again. Angel says they've spoken about it, and she told her, like, regardless, it wasn't your place to say it to Giselle, because if I wanted Giselle to know, I would have told her that fact. But Andy then addresses Kay and Angel's friendship. How it's been like almost 20 years, and how Angel's tone about the chin checking shit changed from when they were shopping to the Preakness event. So Angel says, I mean, I thought to myself, was it really worth dragging this shit out? And the answer was no. Wendy says, so, but do you understand how I could feel some type of way about it? Kay's sitting there trying to interject as these two are having a conversation. Angel's nodding, answering Wendy's question, and Wendy's thanking her. Kay is still trying to talk. Angel is now saying, like, that's why when I watched it back, I could understand where you were coming from, but she couldn't even finish it because Kay is like, what is this? I said, what do you mean, what is this? They're having a conversation. You was trying to interject, trying to get a word in. In my opinion, I feel like she was trying to cut Wendy off so Wendy couldn't get a point in. You trying to interject on them and then get mad when they're not paying you any mind. So, but she got Angel to shut up. Angel stops and says, Kay, I'm sorry, go ahead. I said, what? She's the one interrupting you, and I can't stand when people interrupt me. I can't. That's one of the biggest pet peeves I have. I can't stand when I'm talking and somebody cuts me off, or I can't stand when I'm talking to somebody and they don't listen to me. I can't stand when I'm talking to somebody and you can tell that they're not listening to respond to what I'm stating. They're listening to hear me shut up so they can then get that. I can't stand no shit like that. You want to talk about somebody who want to pop you in the face? That's what I want to do. But Wendy then says, what do you mean? What is this? Like, she's answering the question. Go ahead, Angel. Angel says, I don't want to cut her off. Let me answer you once she finishes the statement. I said, did she chin check you backstage? I said, did Kay chin check you backstage? Because what do you mean? Finish your conversation with Wendy. But Wendy says, no, you were talking. Go ahead. Kay says, no, I'm talking now. And Angel sat there and let her take her moment. I said, and Wendy whispers to Giselle, what type of relationship is this? She controls her. I said, for real. But Kay is apologizing to Angel about the chin checking shit. I said, you could have waited until they finished that conversation. But Angel then says she understood where Wendy was coming from, and she could see how her changing her energy would have been a little bit weird to her. And Wendy thanks her for acknowledging it. Andy then talks about the catfish shit and what Giselle's intention was bringing the shit up about the whole Photoshop shit. And Giselle says, I mean, a blog site had pretty much posted the new girls around the group. And she asked production, when am I going to meet this person? And production was like, stop playing, Giselle. Like, that's Angel. You know that's Angel. And she was like, I wasn't being shady. You were. Stop, Giselle. Angel says you were being shady. Andy was like, I mean, we all use a little bit of Facetune. I don't. I don't. And Giselle then says, I mean, I made this catfish comment in Nevis because it was getting weird. Wendy says, so who made the catfish comment? Giselle says, I did. Wendy says, thank you. Like, you was swearing up and down that I was the one that said it when Giselle was the one that said it. And she just confirmed yet again that she said it. So Giselle then says, I wasn't trying to be shady. Again, you were. But Giselle then says, like, we laughed it off, talked about it the next morning. It was over. But Angel continued to talk about it the rest of the season. It was Angel and you and Ashley. Y'all helped egg it on because she kept bringing it up. So it's equal. But Angel then says, I mean, it became a joke for you for the rest of the season. And I've seen you having a lot of shit to say about me. And I felt like it was rude and you were hazing me. And Angel tries to finish, but Ashley cuts her off. And Angel's like, do you want me to apologize or do you want me to own it? I'm like, at this point, if you don't feel sorry, don't apologize, but you can own it. But she then says, I mean, I heard, catfish. So they showed the clip back. And when it happened, I'm like, if you listening to Giselle, you can clearly hear Giselle mention it. But if you're listening to Wendy and that loud ass laugh, And then you hear what she said, like, ha, ha, ha. And then you finally then refocus on what Giselle says. I could see how she could hear ha, ha, and then catfish. But no, it was clear Giselle said it. But Wendy says, I mean, I hear you, but you were so hell-bent on me saying it. All I did was laugh. And then you came into this group with a plan, and you even said, like, Giselle, you looked at her as a big sister and you didn't want no smoke with her. You had it from me when people had already told you that it wasn't me, and you didn't direct your energy to Giselle. So Angel then says, I mean, I had the energy based off the reactions that we had. I just had a little bit of extra dip on my chip. Wendy appreciates her for owning up to it. Andy then reads a fan question about Angel's comment about Wendy having asshole lips and the Forrest Whitaker eyes. Wendy was like, yeah, please explain that. So Angel says, I mean, it was harsh. I was referring to facial expressions that they make. And the facial expression that she's talking about, I can see what she was talking about. I can see that. A lot of people said it was colorist. I can see how y'all feel that way. But I can see the whole facial expressions, because Wendy do be making that face. She do be making that face. Now, the Forrest Whitaker eyes, I don't know about that. Or the asshole lips. But Wendy then says, because doing that, what did she do? She says that, that's not asshole lips. I don't get that. But Wendy then says, I mean, you talk about, for you to be somebody that doesn't like how people talk about your appearance, for you to talk about my physical aesthetic, it's wrong and it cuts a little bit deeper because you don't like it. What if I called you James Earl Jones? Would I be wrong for that? Giselle's reaction was mine, because when I tell you I chuckled, I said, damn, because it's accurate. You look at the two, you pull up James Earl Jones and you put up a picture of Angel. I said, damn. But Andy says not James Earl Jones, and Stacey says, God rest his soul. I said, Stacey's timing is funny. But Angel apologizes for it. And Andy mentions Kay and Angel like being the fan, or at least the fans are calling them like madness and sadness. Angel doesn't understand it. I'm like, how? Because you definitely are sadness. But Kay was like, watching it back, I could see it, but like 85% of the time, I get along with the group. Or at least 85% of the group I get along with. But we then get to Andy addressing Ashley bringing catfish to the event. And she was like, I mean, it's not that deep. Angel says, but you knew it bothered me, so you were just being nasty and petty, which is true. But Ashley was like, I mean, you should learn to laugh. It was funny. Yeah, to a certain degree, that is true too, because Angel do take shit a little bit too serious. But Angel was like, no, I mean, it wasn't. I think that you should laugh at yourself because you've done a lot of things that are pretty embarrassing. And that is the truth. That is the truth. But Andy then says, at this point, I got a stack of questions here on how messy you've been this season, Ashley. So Ashley's like, to who? Angel says, hello, me, Stacey, even Wendy. So the producers show that shady moment of Ashley at one of her singing events that she don't need to be doing, making that shady like, oh, Zen Wen is in the pen now after Wendy had gotten arrested. Angie asked her if she regrets it, and she apologized, and she was like, I mean, when I saw the mugshot, her smiling and laughing, I thought it wasn't real, and I made a joke because it felt like a joke. You know that shit was not no joke. You know it wasn't a joke, and you weird for that. But Ashley then says, you've made jokes about people in this group. Wendy says, not once did I make jokes about anybody being locked up. I didn't make a joke about Karen. I was the only person that did not make a joke about Karen when she got locked up, which is true. And she could have done it considering how Karen did her at the end of the season. So Ashley then says, I mean, I didn't know the severity of your situation, which is all the reason as to why you shouldn't have did it. If you were a good person, you wouldn't do it to begin with. But not only that, not knowing the severity of the situation, why would you say some shit like that when you know she got kids too? Like, please, Ashley. But Wendy ends up stating, like, I mean, I would believe that if I didn't get additional information. It pretty much stated that you had a vendetta against me at this point. Like, you've had a hidden vendetta against me. Ashley was like, no, it's not that. Let's revisit this. You came into the group with this air like you're better than somebody and like you're better than everybody in the group. I said two things can be true. Did Wendy come in flexing them degrees and whatnot, kind of like putting herself on a pedestal like, yeah, I got this and y'all don't have it? Yeah. But I feel the larger part, and I say this all the time, somebody with confidence, or at least, even though we can tell that was like forced confidence on Wendy's end, considering everything that's changed since then, people with confidence should not affect you. And if they do affect you and you're feeling some type of way about them being so confident in themselves and being so proud of their accomplishments, That's like Wendy's about to say. It says more about you because you're insecure. And we already know the things that Wendy has and the things that she's been able, well, the things that she's accomplished, take the money part out. The things that she's accomplished, we know Ashley could only dream. She can only dream. But she then says, I mean, how you view me, and this is Wendy, how you view me has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. I say, yeah, fact. But Ashley then says, I mean, I don't vilify my accomplishments, though. Wendy says, you don't have none. I said, because do you really? Ashley says, bullshit, bitch. I said, but do you really, though? Name them accomplishments. But Wendy says, I mean, she said, if you had some, you probably would. I'm so mad at Wendy. You see, this is what you do. Ashley says, I mean, I do have one social security number. I said, cut the cameras, dead ass. I was like, get up out of here. The cliffhanger, because it was Stacey's mouth dropped when she said, I said, oh no. Good part one. I'm excited for next week. I'm hopefully going to get this out on Sunday night. Hopefully I can get it out on Sunday night, but if not, I'll be here on Monday. But thumbs up the video because we are on another day. We're not on Sunday. Get me in the algorithm, get in the comments, hype the video, share the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all next week. Peace.